Greetings and welcome. We are in Senior English B. And our objective now is to continue our conversation with the great Victorian poet Robert Browning. And we are looking now on page 982 at his classic text, Profera's Lover. Now I want to just bring to mind, we're making a 3A observation right away. So you can write this down right away, a 3A observation. I want to bring to mind that we are working now with a poet who wrote a poem called My Last Duchess, a text we worked with yesterday. Now we're going to move on to Profera's Lover. I don't know if you remember the old Guns N' Roses band, but they had a song years ago, I used to love her, but I had to kill her, and now she's buried 6 feet under in my backyard. Well, of course, Axl Rose and his group will be very familiar with these two poems, and both of these two poems extremely controversial. You could argue that this grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together, there she stands as if alive. Well, that's fairly controversial. My girl smiled too much, and so I had her jacked, right, as we were saying about Last Duchess. But now we're going to turn to a poem that's a little bit more unsettling. We're going to look at Profera's Lover, and we're going to start at 2B real quickly. Put it in your notes, 2B. And the first thing we're going to say about this poem is that it is another, no big shock here, dramatic monologue. But here's the deal. You should now be able, having worked with Tennyson's Ulysses and then Last Duchess, you ought to be able to remember what are the two things we're looking for when we hit one of these dramatic monologues. Remember, monologue, one person speaking, dramatic, some kind of dramatic context. There's two questions we always ask when we hit these things. Do you remember what they are? One, who is the speaker? Right, who is the speaker? Who's actually talking in the poem? In other words, it's some kind of person, character, whatever, right? In Tennyson's Ulysses, it's Ulysses. In the Last Duchess, it's that duke. So we're going to ask about this poem. Who's the actual speaker in this poem? Two, what's the dramatic context of this poem? Or more particularly, who's he talking to? In Tennyson's Ulysses, come my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Ulysses, Odysseus, is talking to his mariners. They're going to sail with him. And by extension, as we said, all England people. In Last Duchess, the Duke is speaking to who? The agent who is going to set up his next marriage. The question will be in this poem, who is the speaker talking to? Especially at the end of the poem. Having said that, now let's go ahead and go to the poem itself. We'll take a look at it. Profera's Lover. I'm reading with you now on page 982. Just read with me, and then we will go through the process as we always do of exegesis. Profera's Lover. The rain set in early tonight. The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite and did its works to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break. When glided in Porphyria, straight she shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves by, untied her hat, and let the damp hair fall. And last she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist, and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping, made my cheek lie there, and spread over all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me. She, too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale for love of her, and all in vain. So she was come through wind and rain. Be sure, I looked up at her eyes, happy and proud. At last, I knew Profera worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew, while I debated what to do. That moment, she was mine. Mine. Fair, perfectly pure and good, I found a thing to do. And all her hair in one long yellow string I wound 3 times her little throat around, and strangled her. No pain, felt she. I am quite sure she felt no pain. As a shut bud that holds a bee, I warily oped her lids, Again laughed the blue eyes without a stain, and I untightened next the tress about her neck. Her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. I propped her head up as before, only this time my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon it still, the smiling, rosy little head. So glad it has its utmost will, that all it scorned at once is fled, and I its love am gained instead. Profera's love, she guessed not how her darling one wish would be heard, and thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word. Now, I'm always interested to talk with readers of this poem and to ask them, even if this was your first reading of this poem, at what point in the poem, two things, at what point in the poem did you go, whoa, 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 what did I just read? Right? It's fairly self-evident. I've had students that will report, okay, I just kind of do what I always do, skimming this poem, I was reading along, and all of a sudden I got to that line. And I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I literally turned back again and went, wait a minute, what's the title of the poem? See, we don't want to miss anything. Browning is genius. We are standing with genius when we look at what this cat's pulling off in this poem. Title of the poem is what? Porphyria's Lover. And then they go, okay, I got to start reading again. So they read it again, then they get to it, and they're like, oh, this is a poem about a guy who takes the long blonde hair of his girl, winds it 3 times around her throat, and jacks her. But wait, we're not done. There's quite a few lines after that. Notice right after he says about strangling her, he tells you something. Wait, he tells who something? Who's he talking to in this poem?
Himself.
And by the end of the poem, what is his attitude towards what he's done? Now, we're going to get into this poem on a number of levels. One of the obvious questions we're going to have to ask, and let's jot them down, because I will tell you in advance, not only for its day, but even for today, this is a very disturbing poem. It is disturbing for male readers. It is disturbing for female readers. One of the obvious questions about this poem, though, is, and I'll just ask it now, don't answer, just write down the question. We'll go through the process of deciding. The question is simply this. He jacks his girl. Is it the act of strangling her? Is it premeditated? In other words, is this a poem about a guy who says, yes, tonight I'm going to jack my girl? Is that this poem? Or rather, is this an action that is committed spontaneously? Now, we're going to know from the poem, but we got to deduce from the poem. Number 2, who is this girl? Yeah, these are really disturbing questions. Who is this girl? And does she know that when she shows up at her guy's room, it'll be her last night? Does she know she's about to get jacked? By extension, do you, the reader, have some sense that once it happens, you should go, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Browning was giving me all kinds of clues at the beginning of the poem. I should have known, just like she should have known. Did she know? Could she have known? Now, these are difficult questions because of the implications. Because last night, on some university campus in this country, some drop-dead gorgeous guy met a girl in a party, and she reported to the police after the fact, but he seemed so nice. He was hot. He was really good looking. But he seemed so nice. And so I left with him. I mean, he didn't seem like the kind of guy that would lie to me. See, this is an interesting question. How does a woman ever know what a guy is really like and what a guy will really do? This is going to be one of the fundamental questions of the poem, but the real question will be, how does a guy really know what it's like and what he'll ever do? That's the real question. And in this poem, Browning is going to kind of open up a can of really interesting psychological worms, and we're going to have to kind of get to the bottom of it. Now, some will point out that the single most important line of the entire poem is actually not a line, but it's a piece of punctuation, and it's the very last one at the end of the poem. What is the punctuation mark at the end of this poem?
Exclamation.
Whoa. Which you're going to ask, what is an exclamation mark? Like, what's that for? What's an exclamation mark for? It provides what kind of emphasis? Notice it ain't no question mark. It ain't no period. It's an exclamation mark. Which seems to suggest that what this cat did, he's not just real upset about. Not upset about it? Dude, you strangled your girlfriend. Yeah, we'll get to it. Let's start at the beginning, though, shall we? And let's just watch the ways in which Browning is going to play very dangerous games with language. Now, we set you up yesterday, didn't we? Browning did. By writing Last Duchess, where the girl's smiling at all the wrong people. And in fact, often male readers will kind of jokingly do this type of thing. Like, oh no you don't. You know, that kind of thing. Of course, it's a fine line, right? Because we understand that the notion of females being physically abused by their men is a serious problem in America last night. We know the numbers of thousands and thousands of women who either were killed or had to go to seek medical help because some guy took care of his business. We're familiar with that. We were dealing with that with Last Duchess yesterday in the abstract. Now, we're going to get to the concrete. We're going to watch a guy kill a woman. Not some stranger. This isn't some woman he doesn't know. This is going to be his girl. Or maybe we would say his sometime girl. Let's take a look at the poem. And let's go back and start to ask the obvious question. Why did it take me until the line I strangled her for me to go, oh, whoa, whoa, this is a very dangerous guy. Can we see anything in the poem early that kind of sets us up for it? Well, let's start and take a look. Notice how we began. We start, first of all, with context. The rain set in early tonight. Okay? The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite and did its worst to vex the lake. So the first 4 lines of this poem, write it down in your own notes. Put it in your own notes. What is the weather like outside? What's sullen mean? If you are a sullen person, what are you? Happy or sad? Really sad and morose. Like sad / angry. Like you're looking to jack somebody. That's the word sullen. Right? But wait a minute, we're not talking about a person. What are we talking about? We're talking about the wind tearing down the tops of trees. Nasty weather outside. Finally, on line 5, you get the speaker's voice. Remember dramatic monologue. You get the speaker for the first time. I listened with heart fit to break. So right away, we learned something right away. The very first line, where this guy says about himself, he says, nasty weather tonight. And I listened to that weather with my heart fit to break. Which means what? Is he happy or sad? He's clearly upset. Can we say it that way? There's something the matter, and we're at line 5. Notice, when glided in Porphyria, and all of a sudden we go, oh, wait, Profera is, of course, in the title of our poem. Profera is who? His girl. What does the verb glided mean to you? Write that one in your notes. The verb glided. We're told Profera glided in. What does that even mean? Hernandez, I need more focus. What does that even mean? Glided in. He could have said what? He could have said what? She walked in. He says she glided in. Now, knowing what we know about the way this project ends, we can begin to deduce that some of these verbs have secondary meanings to them. The actual meaning of a word, it's denotation. The implied meaning of the words, it's connotation, right? The connotation of this word, glided in, seems to suggest maybe not so pleased. What is it that she does? Let's let's just look at it and write it down. When glided in Porphyria, straight she shut out the cold out and the storm. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where is this guy? Can you put it in your notes? This guy is sitting where? Is he in an apartment in downtown London? No. How do you know that? How can you tell that? He's outside of the city, right? Next to water, next to trees. He's in a house all by himself. We're told she shows up to him. She, notice, walks through the wind and rain. We're going to hear in a little bit. She shows up to him. What is it that she does when she gets there? Well, let's take a look. She straight shuts out the cold and the storm. She kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What does that mean, cheerless grate blaze up? What does that mean? What is the grate? Cheerless grate blaze up means what? Right, she makes the fire burn. So in other words, he's been sitting in his living room in the dark, waiting for her to show up. She shows up, and the first thing she does is makes the fire burn brighter. Then she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl. What? What does that mean? So what's the next thing she does? So she puts the fire, makes it all go up. Then what? Then she takes off her coat, dripping. Why? She came through the wind and rain, we're going to hear, right? So she takes off her coat. That's the next thing. Laid her, look at the adjective. Soiled gloves by. What does soiled mean? Dirty. Soaked or dirty, right? Gloves by. Untied her hat and let the damp hair fall. Now the fact that she has long hair will be significant later in the poem. Right? But let's just put this together. What is it that she does? She shows up at the house. She walks in. She shuts the door. It's dark. She flares up the fire. She takes off her coat, her hat. She lets her long hair fall down. It's damp. It's wet. She's been walking in the rain for a while. And last, she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, So to this point, has he said anything to her? No. Hasn't said a word. Hasn't said, hi girlfriend, great to see you. Hasn't said, I'm so happy that you're here. Didn't say anything about, were you safe walking through the wind and rain and the nasty weather outside? He hasn't said a word. What is he doing? Literally, what is he doing? No, I'm not asking in here. I'm asking physically, literally, what is he doing? He is. He's just sitting there. When no voice replied from who? From him. In other words, he is saying nothing. Whoa, what's he doing? He's ignoring her. Why? Is he happy or sad? Do you get a sense of this? Is he a little bit torqued off? Do you get a sense of this? Yeah. This is the I'm mad and I'm not talking. I once had a female student who said, I know this guy. He sounds just like my boyfriend. Every time he gets mad, he just sits there and you try and talk to him and he won't say anything back. One or two students said, what do you mean he's like your boyfriend? Did you read the rest of this poem? But hello, we're just a few lines in, right? We're just a few lines in. In other words, this is a guy who is mad, and because he's mad, can we say it out loud? He's pouting, isn't he? He's mad and he's pouting. Wait. Mad about what? Well, now see, we don't know this yet, do we? We're going to try to deduce what is the motive for the action that he commits later in the poem. Here all we know is that he's mad. He's not talking. Notice, we're not done yet, though. This poem gets more interesting in terms of Porphyria. Take a look at what happens next. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping, made my cheek lie there, and spread o'er all her yellow hair. Whoa. Now, wait a minute. We got to work on this and you can draw a little stick figure in your notes if you need it. So that you can understand exactly this. Hello. This is huge. If you don't understand what we're working with right now, you are not going to appreciate the end of this poem. He's sitting. He's not talking. He is mad. She walks in. She makes up the fire. You kind of get the sense she's probably, even chattering a bit, trying to talk to him. Trying to make him be happy again type of thing, right? She takes off her coat. She undoes her hair. She lets her hair come down. He's not talking. She speaks to him. He's not talking. So then we're told she sits down next to him and does two things. She takes, what's this with the arm thing? Go back and look at it again and read it. Read it close. What does she do? You need to understand physically what she does with him. What does she do? He's sitting there. Is he moving? Not wanting to move. He is mad. What does she do? Look at it again. It says, put my arm about her waist. Put my arm about her waist. But let's play literal first. Before we talk about any implications, let's literally be physical. So he sits down, she sits down next to him. He's not wanting to move his arm. She takes his arm and she puts it around her. We're not done yet. Then keep reading. And made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping, made my cheek lie there. Literally, what is it that you would be looking at if you saw these two like this? She is sitting. Go ahead, Logan, you can do it again. Yeah. Logan took his shirt off the side. That's important. We don't ever want to see it again, but that's important, right? She takes her dress. Hello. She takes her dress. Right. Mr. Beck is following our poem. She takes her dress. She pushes the shoulder bare. But wait. You're missing one more spot. She sits down next to him. She puts his arm around her. She takes her shoulder, makes it bare. Wait, keep going though. Keep reading. She takes his head and she leans his head onto her shoulder. Right. Beck's starting to get it now. And the cheek is laying on her shoulder. Do you got me? Now, I won't call up two of us to do this, but you can see it in your mind's eye. You can even draw it in stick figure in your notes. Wait a minute. I only ask, hello? See, it's ironic. Wait a minute. Why are we giggling if you know that she's 25 seconds away from breathing her last breath? See, all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, you're right. This is not funny. But wait, it is kind of funny. See how that works? Browning has got you. But wait a minute. You missed one thing. In relationship to the two heads, his and her, which one is sitting higher?
Her.
Why her?
Because she's on his arm up there.
Right. No. Keep going. They were probably sitting side by side. How do you know that? Because she will take his arm and put it around.
She's taller.
You're getting close. It has to do with what she does with his cheek. Where does she put it?
On her shoulder.
On her shoulder. Up to this point, everything has been done by her. He has done nothing. He has said nothing. He has said... Yeah, that used the term, she's dominant. Well, let's go ahead and put that in our notes. It's a brilliant observation. And how do we know that? The two heads. Who's got the higher head? She does. She's done everything to this point. She's taken him, made him put his arm around her, sat down, put the head down onto the bare shoulder. Obviously, the removal of the garment off the shoulder. All this is clearly sexual. I mean, come on. I mean, it's fairly obvious. Keep going, though. And then he forces his head, she forces his head to do one of these, to lay on her shoulder, his cheek on her shoulder. And then the next verb. She starts murmuring. Keep reading. Murmuring. What does murmur mean? What does murmur mean? She's speaking, but not loudly, right? Keep reading. Murmuring how she loved me. She, too weak for all her heart's endeavor, to set its struggling passion free from pride, and vainer ties dissever, break apart, and give herself to me forever. Whoa. Now we can deduce these lines. Okay, let's write it down. Let's write it down in our notes. You got a situation where you got a guy who is waiting for his girl to show up. She does show up. She does everything. She fixes the fire. She takes off her clothes. She sits down next to him. She forces his arm around her. She puts his head on her shoulder. And then she starts whispering how much she loves him. He, however, is not saying anything. Now he's just thinking. And he says about her, the problem with her is that she won't dissever or break other ties. Tells us something. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Where was she earlier in the evening? See, we don't know exactly, but we can guess.
She was in the town.
We know one thing she wasn't. Can we say it this way? Can we say it this way with absolute certainty? We know one place she wasn't. She wasn't with him. Right? She wasn't with him. Now she shows up to him and she starts whispering to him about how much she loves him. Keep reading. I'm at the top of 984 now. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale for love of her, and all in vain. Vain here means useless. Useless, right? So she was come through wind and rain. Be sure, here it is. See, the juxtaposition of the heads. Her head is above his. Be sure I looked up at her eye. Happy and proud. Cold. At last I knew Profera worshipped me. What does that even mean? Write it in your notes. What does it mean that in his mind he says, she worships me? What does that word even mean? Hernandez, what does it mean to say someone worships somebody else?
Praises him.
Praises him. Keep going. Does whatever he wants. Keep going. She totally loves him. Keep going.
Can't just put me on the spot.
Is it true that guys at Worland High School, in the end, above all other things in regards to their girl, want to be worshipped by their girl? He says, notice, at last, he said, I knew it. She totally worshipped me. Of course, what's the irony? Her head is above his head. He's looking up at her. Right? I mean, if there's any worshiping that goes on, you get me here, Roberts? If there's any real worshiping that's going on, worship happens from the lower towards the higher. She is sitting above him. Keep reading. A surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew, while I debated what to do. He hasn't said a word. He's sitting in the chair. She comes in. She does these things. She puts her shoulder there. She puts his cheek there. He looks up into her eyes and he says, she totally worships me. What to do, what to do, what to do, what to do. This is going through his mind while he's sitting there with her. What to do, what to do, what to do. Now, of course, hello, a fairly average reader of this poem will be like thinking, what do you mean what to do? Dude, clearly she obviously wants to be with you. What do you mean what to do? How stupid are you? And yet, notice, that's not his instinct. His instinct here isn't sexual. His instinct is, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Which seems to suggest this is not a premeditated act he's about to commit. This is not a, I can hardly wait till she gets here and I'm going to strangle her to death. No, no, no. That's not this guy. This guy is sitting there trying to figure out what to do. Keep reading. What I should do, he says. Profera worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew while I debated what to do. That moment, she was mine. Mine. What does that even mean? She was mine. She belonged. She belonged to him. What's our P word here? It is possession. In other words, wait. See, hello. I ask simple questions and you assume they're simple until you start thinking. To say she was mine means that before she came through the door, what did he assume about her?
She wasn't his.
That's important. That's important. That she wasn't his before. Now she's here. Now she's mine. Notice, he says it twice. Mine, mine, fair, perfectly pure and good. Which is interesting because that kind of juxtaposes with adjectives like soiled earlier, right? The soiled gloves. Perfectly pure and good. Colon, I found a thing to do. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't go to the next line yet. What do you mean you found a thing to do? What does that even mean?
Found a solution.
Found a solution? Keep going. What does it mean to say I found?
An answer.
An answer. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Right. It's like out of the clear blue. It hits me. I know what I gotta do.
Killer.
Okay, now, hello. You already know what happens, so now let's look at the way he talks about what happens. Okay? You already know what happens. But let's now look at the language he uses to describe what he does. Look at what he says. I found a thing to do. And all her hair in one long yellow string, I wound 3 times her little throat around. Jot down in your notes. What's interesting that he uses the adjective little here. Little throat. Now, of course, literally, you can say she has a skinny throat. But there's a tone here. A tone. A voice. Her little throat around. Little seeming to suggest weakness. But wait a minute. Before, his head was below her head. She had dominance before. Notice now it's her little throat. Keep reading. Her little throat around and strangled her. Notice the period right away, strangle. But then notice Browning, he immediately followed, because he knows a reader of this poem is going to be like, whoa, 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 you just did what? So notice the next line. No pain felt she. I'm quite sure she felt no pain. In other words, it's almost like he's saying, oh, don't worry, it didn't hurt her. It didn't hurt her at all. No, I strangled her, but it didn't hurt her. No pain felt she. I'm quite sure she felt no pain. Look at what he says next. As a shut bud that holds a bee, a flower that's caught a bee and then starts to open, I warily oped her lids. Whoa. This is not a poem about a guy that strangles a girl. This is only about a poem about a guy who kills his girl and then opens her eyes. I'm not done. Keep reading. Again laughed the blue eyes without a stain. We think of soiled gloves. And I untightened next the tress hair about her neck. Her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. When he takes away the hair, blood comes back up into the cheek. Of course, she's dead. Making her cheeks again flush red. And then he kisses her. Keep going. I propped her head up as before. Only this time, my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon it still. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And then it hits you. All of this poem was written after he's done it. And you have to imagine that she's sitting there, her body, leaning onto his shoulder, and he's writing these words. Writing these words to who? Well, that's a difficult question. Who's he writing this poem to? I told you, this is a dramatic monologue. We know the speaker, but we also need to get this context. Who are we writing to? Who is this for?
I planned it. We planned to kill her.
He didn't plan to kill her. That's the whole point, isn't it? It's just totally impromptu. Who's he writing this to? Who's he speaking to?
Just the general.
Well, it's interesting because you're the one reading it.
Oh, he's writing me.
Yeah, he is writing to you. And he's making a little bit of a defense. He's telling you what happened, but he's telling you how good it all worked out. Take a look at how he says the last thing. It droops upon it still. Look at what he says. The smiling, rosy, he uses the adjective again. Little head. So glad it has its utmost will. She got what she wanted. Not what she deserved. She got what she wanted. That's what he's saying. Her utmost will. She wanted to be with me. I made it happen. Now she is with me. Keep going. So glad it has its utmost will, that all it scorned at once is fled, and I, its love, am gained instead! Exclamation mark. Hurrah! She got what she wanted. She said she wanted to be with me. She said she loved me. I made it happen. Keep reading. Profera's, whoa, this is brilliant. Watch this. Pay attention. I'm teaching you how to read closer. What's the title of the poem? Profera's what? Go back and look at it again. The title of the poem is Profera's lover. Notice here, though, at the next line. Profera's love, colon. She guessed not how her darling one wish would be heard. In other words, he says, isn't it ironic? I made her happy. She had no idea how I was going to make her happy. I fulfilled her desire to be with me. I made it happen. And thus we sit together now. And all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word! Exclamation point. That's what he says. It was her destiny. She got what she wanted. She got what she deserved. She got what she wanted. Whoa! Now, this is a deeply unsettling poem. Why? Jot down why, though. What makes this poem so unsettling? Jot down a couple of things and then we'll talk about it. What makes this poem so unsettling? I mean, you can say, yeah, it's an unsettling poem because a guy strangles a girl. Okay, but let's not be 7th graders. We know that. Let's talk about the poem from a more mature perspective than he kills her, and so that's shocking. Let's talk about what makes this poem so remarkably shocking. Go ahead, say it out loud.
The way he explains
He explains why he did it. Notice he doesn't have any shame. He doesn't have a, oh, geez, I hope nobody catches. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I just did. No, that's not any of this at all. He's proud of what he's done because why, though? He thinks he's done the right thing. Whoa. Strangling your girl is the right thing? Hey, she said it's what she wanted. She didn't say she wanted to be strangled. She showed up, didn't she? She knew I was mad, didn't she? She knew I didn't want to talk to him, didn't she? She put her head above mine. What's up with that? Like somehow she's dominant or superior to me? She got what she asked for. Ooh. But wait a minute, it gets worse than that. Because this is a poem intentionally written to show you he did not know he was going to do it. I found a thing to do. I looked up at her, I'm surprised. She worships me. What do I do? I kill her. That's what I'll do. Which seemed to suggest he wasn't planning on doing this. He just did it. Jot down in your notes why that fact might be just a little bit scary to female readers of this poem. Why is that fact scary for female readers of this poem? Deeply unsettling, right? Do you really think she went, yay, I'm going to go to my boyfriend's house tonight in the middle of the woods and he's going to strangle me? No. She doesn't have any sense of that. She shows up. He doesn't have any sense of it either. She shows up. He's mad. He's jealous. She's probably been with other guys. Enough of that nonsense. We'll make sure that she's exclusively mine. Gee, done. Hey, she got what she wanted! Exclamation mark. Even God hasn't said anything wrong with this. Exclamation mark. That's how the poem ends. Why is this poem an unsettling poem for guys to read?
They don't know what they'll do either.
Right? Very unsettling for guys to read, right? Because this poem seems to suggest there's a fine line between love and jealousy and acting in inappropriate ways. Right? That's this whole thing, isn't it? All of a sudden, are you ready? Now I'll finish. Victorian readers of this poem were really unsettled by this, especially male readers of this poem. Because what this poem seems to suggest is that guys can't always be trusted by their women. But more importantly, guys can't always trust themselves. In a fit of rage, a guy can twist stuff in his mind to such a degree that he actually thinks that the most horrific thing he could do was a good idea. It's what she wanted. And in that moment, we will say, well, clearly this guy's crazy. But wait a minute. Can we call him crazy if he writes a poem where he is explaining it so clearly? We normally don't think of psychopaths as having this ability of language, do we? Which begs the obvious question, what's crazy about this? Should she have known? Should girls who hang out with guys who have violent tempers and then get jacked, shouldn't they know in advance already this is the way the guy's inclined anyway? Why is it that they keep going back? Why does Porphyria show up that night? Or does she assume he's bad, but he's not that bad? And she thinks maybe she can change him. Of course, in the end, the last question for your notes is, what do you make of that God hasn't said a word thing? He does not feel any what? He doesn't feel any guilt.